Welcome to Educate Yourself channel. I'm Raja, Scale Digital Program Consultant. In this video, I'm sharing the learning on Agile teams and how best an organization adopt them to deliver values to its business or customer. Here is the famous quote from Edward Deming on system thinking. A system must be managed. It does not manage itself. Left to themselves, component becomes selfish, competitive, independent profit centers on its own and thus destroy the whole system. The secret is cooperation between components towards the aim of the organization. Let's learn with an example of development project. What do development project creates? A complete value stream of specific products with specific capabilities offered at specific prices or effort through a dialogue with specific customers made in a specific environment using a specific operations and the machines with specific capabilities on parts and materials brought from a specific supplier with their own people skills and specific capabilities. Value streams succeed only if all of those specific characteristics are aligned. Projects and practices fail when they optimize one part of the value stream at the expense of other or when the parts just don't fit. Organization deploys various types of teams to cater to the need of the overall project's delivery or the program delivery. So as an organization, we need to decide if each of our teams build piece of the solution end to end or whether we rely on other teams to complete our own work. It is the typical high-level view of value stream, which has the starting point as a trigger. It's kind of requirement from customers, and it leverages various predefined standard operating procedure steps by producing the unique specific value to its target customers. While doing that, while we perform the various steps, an organization necessary to use various system in place. Let's take a view of delivery organization which has choices of adopting a component team and a feature team. Component teams are typically organized around a layers of the application such as user interface, data, platform, and cannot deliver much value the customer would recognize. Whereas the feature teams are organized around customer value and can deliver customer facing features. Let's understand the meaning of both feature teams and component teams in details along with pros and cons. Feature team is also a long-lived cross-functional team creates features which provides end-to-end functionality to a customer. Feature team is typically a subset of the larger program team. When we adopt the feature teams, the immediate benefit the organization can get is, or the program teams can get realize it, or the feature teams are not really dependent on individuals or other teams when delivering the end-to-end functionalities. While doing so, there are some limitations of feature teams as well. So when feature teams are focusing on end-to-end functionality, they often create the technical debt if the teams are not working as per the enterprise standards. It might be inefficient if the teams are not experts in some technical areas. Okay. Most often, the feature teams attempt to create or build everything from scratch if the teams are not expected to consume services created by component teams. Whereas if a team is dedicatedly focusing on component-based deployment, the component team also is a long-lived teams provide the part of the solutions, okay, which can be consumed by other teams or other part of the solutions. The immediate benefits of component teams would be it set up the right governance or enterprise standards which organization mandates as strategic technical directions, right? And also it's required a high degree of specializations when it adopting the component based approach. There are some limitations or say the bottleneck, right? The component will become a bottleneck to the overall end-to-end value streams. Okay? And also if the team is inefficient in terms of fulfilling its resource needs, right? The other value streams is or the other teams heavily depending on the component teams. So there is a bottleneck is created into the value streams, okay, and which is against the lean practices. So what an organization can do? Can they organize the teams by feature or by component? Right. Let's look at what one side of the view is or feature teams. As Agile says, Agile continuous delivery emphasize features which constitute stories that can solve user needs and differentiate solutions for competitors. Right? When we adopted the component teams on the other side, they build the resilient large-scale systems out of various components that provide for separation of concerns the organization has, and also it's foster reusability and it's improve the testability aspect. If you look at the feature teams, if you focus too much on features, or I would say if the entire organization is focusing on only the feature teams, it may brittle the system architecture that are unmaintainable and prone to error. On the other side, if the organization focusing 100% on component team, it might be brilliant design system, but it slow down the value delivery to the customer. So what can we do? Right? The organization has to getting the right level of both component team and feature teams in order to accelerate value delivery and create a system with technical integrity that reduces errors and also simplifies the future changes. So let's look at some of the considerations and recommendations to the organization to adopt component teams or feature teams. Component teams are optimized for architectural robustness by having a small number of tightly coupled developers work on the system. It can make sense to create a component team when a component team contains unique or legacy technologies and it's expected to provide algorithms or logics that are very specific in nature and deep technical understanding or theoretical expertise. When a program needs a uniquely responsible functionality related to compliance, safety, security, it can go for a component team. Right? The big disadvantages to the component organization is obvious. It slows value flow to its customer. A majority of the system features create dependencies that require cooperation between components teams to build, deploy, and ultimately release. Time spent much of their time discussing dependencies between teams and testing behavior across component rather than being able to deliver end user values. But a feature team can complete a feature by itself. The feature can be too big to be consumed by one agile team and may ultimately require story from multiple feature teams. In addition, the very notion of a feature or a component team is a bit simplistic, as many teams have responsibility for both. The feature team, as long as if they have a cross-functional skill set within them, which can take up the less dependency of their effort and produce maximum values with less cycle time, the organization go for feature teams. Now let's look at what is the right size approach. Right? To ensure high feature throughput, the industry often observe a mix of both backup 75 to 80% feature teams and 20 to 25% component teams. Two main factors drive this balance as illustrated in these pictures. The y-axis shows the practical limitations of the degree of specialization required. Some components require unique technical or theoretical expertise that is not generally found across many feature teams. Ensuring this technical integrity indicates the uses of a component team. The x-axis shows the economy of potential reuse. Some components have a high degree of reuse across the system or even across multiple product lines. Leveraging the economy of scale for reuse itself tend to leverage the component teams. This mixed model emphasizes the additional capabilities needed to drive the program velocity and complexity. Organization must focus at the system level in order to build the robust continuous integration and continuous infrastructure so that the feature teams must able to integrate the entire system at any desirable point. And also the organization should build the right automations infrastructure to, which can broadly automate the regression test suites to help the both feature teams and component teams. The system team is engaged in an activity improving the overall continuous integration and continuous deployment landscape. And also the organization has to encourage or motivates to have the community of practice which can which can emphasize the knowledge sharing, collaborations across component teams and features team, and also strongly emphasize the endemic code quality along with the refactoring skills. It's typically is required to mandate the scalability aspect. So let's recap on what we learned so far. So we learned with the example of a development projects which create a unique value to the customer, which is indicated as X as the outcome, with specific n number of Y's, which includes capability, skills, environment, people, and so on. So, right? Evaluation to a mix biased towards feature teams appear to produce high velocity and efficacy of larger agile development. Simply, dependencies are fewer and easier to manage, and value throughput is higher with feature teams. Agile programs must continually inspect and adopt and indeed reorganize as necessary to follow the value that is driving the market. With this, this is my ending notes. Thank you for learning along with me. Nandri.